Hello and welcome to Euros All Access with me, Sam Matterface, talkSPORT chief football correspondent Alex Crook. The former Chelsea, Benfica and West Ham left-back Scott Minto, and I'm delighted to say Spanish football expert Terry Gibson is with us as well. Here's what's coming up on this first edition of Euros All Access. Well, the one thing that strikes you immediately about the England squad, I think, is that it's very, very different to the one that went to the World Cup just 18 months ago.
He has gone on form more than ever.
Grealish's form's not been good enough. Maddison's form's clearly not been good enough. I just wonder if this is almost too revolutionary from Gareth Southgate. They've won 1 out of 4 games in the calendar year, England, so they've got no momentum at all against this tournament. Is it too much change too quickly?
This sums up the squad to me, that it looks like we're not ready.
Look, Mbappe for me is the best player in the world, I think. And from a mental side point of view, Didier Deschamps has been there, seen it, done it as a player and a manager as well. I don't see a weakness in them.
In terms of reaching the final, only France can really stop themselves. I think it's a really talented Portugal squad. If the draw pans out as we expect, they're going to find themselves on the opposite side of the draw to England and France. I think that gives them a massive advantage right from the off.
You look at their squad, the talent is dripping from every single angle of it. They should win it. It will be disappointing if they don't win it. Nagelsmann started to turn the fortunes round a little bit, and I think they'll cause problems for anybody during the course of the tournament. Look, I don't think they'll necessarily win it, but I think there'll be a story.
The pressure of being host nation as well can be a disadvantage, but I'm not convinced they're at their best yet, I have to be honest.
I think in terms of the group, it wouldn't completely surprise me if Hungary were to top it and Germany might have to settle for second place.
People have asked me about Spain's chances. They could win it, they might not make it out of the group. The expectation levels in Spain at the moment are not massive. There isn't a huge deal of pressure on.
Scotland need to win 1 game probably to finish in the top 3. And I can't see where that win is coming from. I don't think they get a point.
Third place is absolutely what they should be aiming for.
I'm not as pessimistic at all on this. I think they're going to qualify for the last 16 for the first time in their history. I do think at the big moments they turn it on.
You mentioned Didier Deschamps and the fact the French public haven't really bought into him. Didi Hamann was saying to me there's still doubts about Nagelsmann amongst the German supporters. Obviously there's a lot of England fans who are not behind or believing in Gareth Southgate. The Portuguese don't believe in Roberto Martinez. One of these managers got to prove them wrong and win it.
Yeah, welcome and hello. The Euros less than a week away for us. This is our big preview to the tournament. We'll be doing Euros All Access daily throughout the course of the tournament on this feed, so make sure you join us for that. We'll do a few episodes on YouTube as well. Are we excited about the big kickoff? Are we excited? Excited? You excited?
Absolutely, can't
you packed
wait.
your bag?
It's already packed.
He's got himself a new top.
He packed it a month ago. He's that excited.
Not quite, but it is packed and ready, and there are a few new additions to the wardrobe.
Just before he went to Portugal, he packed his Euro month kit as well.
Well, there's a few sort of WhatsApps doing the rounds about what you're doing when you first arrive. Ali McCoy is going to watch AC/DC in concert in Munich. There's a rooftop bar that is open next to the hotel that I'm staying at.
I'm going to say you're doing both of those, aren't you?
But I've asked Ali for a ticket to AC/DC. Crook's been invited to the Adidas launch party. He was the first name on the guest list.
You
with
won't
his
see him
producer. And I asked him, what are you actually doing at this tournament? What's your role? And he said, networking.
He's very good at that.
Yeah. So a bit of networking, a bit of podcast, a bit anything else? Are you doing a couple of games?
Doing a couple of commentaries early doors, a couple of Spain games actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Okay, we'll tap into Terry's knowledge. You looking forward to it, Terry?
Yeah, very much so. I always like a summer of football. I always used to feel a letdown when the season ends and you have that couple of months about football. So every couple of years, the summer tournament is something to look forward to.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to it. Can't wait to be there. Can't wait to bring you a flavour of what it's like to be in Germany and also keep you updated with all the big news at the tournament. So make sure you subscribe and listen to the Euros All Access daily and tell all your friends about it as well. We'll be at the games, we'll be in the mix of it, we'll be giving you the information that you need to get you through the day. It'll be bite-sized, it'll only be about 30 minutes or so, so you'll be able to have it every single morning or afternoon, whenever you want to listen to it. Right, one place to start as we go for our big preview. We're going to do all of the teams that we think are big contenders, and everyone thinks someone different because it's such a wide open tournament, which means England can win it, doesn't it? Well, the one thing that strikes you immediately about the England squad, I think, is that it's very, very different to the one that went to the World Cup just 18 months ago, which is quite a surprise, I think. 13 players from the 2022 World Cup squad are not involved, and 12 players are making their debut at an international tournament. The big headlines, obviously, Maguire, Maddison and Grealish being left out in midweek. Scott, first of all, look, we've all spoken in detail about it on various different outlets, but very quickly, are you surprised by that decision to let Grealish in particular go?
No, I'm not. And I think it's almost like where he has relied on people of the past, he has gone on form more than ever. And I said actually a few days earlier, I personally wouldn't have taken Jack Grealish, great guy, great human being. But in terms of pure form, I think at this moment in time, I'd rather have a Gordon, a Palmer and an Eze as well. It's simply when Pep needed to win games at the very end of the season, he didn't call upon him, and I think that speaks volumes.
Dunk's not 100% fit, didn't get involved in the Friday night game. Stones had to come off during that match. Branthwaite's been left at home. Gurley's hardly played the back end of the season. Defence is a major issue. Harry Maguire, I mean, I think privately is not happy about being left behind. He thinks he would have got there by the sort of fourth game of the tournament. Should they have taken a risk on him, bearing in mind the other problems and inexperience that they've got?
Yeah, I think they probably should. You know, you've got 26 players that you can take, so I think you can afford to take a risk. He's taken a risk with Luke Shaw, who, on the face of it, has played a lot less football in the second half of the season than
But he
Maguire.
doesn't have any cover there.
No, that's the thing.
No, that is true. But I think it's interesting what Scott was saying. And again, on the face of it, I agree. Grealish's form's not been good enough. Maddison's form's clearly not been good enough. I just wonder if this is almost too revolutionary from Gareth Southgate. And it's very different to what he's done at tournaments past. He has relied on the established old heads. He has relied on certain favourite players. And I wonder, is there a danger of causing a little bit of dressing room disharmony when you start to leave out some of those stalwarts? If you're saying that Harry Maguire privately isn't happy about being left out, how do his teammates feel about that, particularly with the issues that I think England had defensively, even without trimming it down from 33 to 26 and leaving him out?
I mean, you say cause dressing room disharmony, Terry. I mean, if you're upset about going to the Euros and your mate's not with you,
Oh, no.
I mean, you need to be a little bit more self-aware and probably a little bit more confident, right? I mean, I think they'll get over it over a cup of coffee after about 12 hours.
Yeah, but I do take Alex's point there, because I worked as a coach with Northern Ireland, and I'm not sure Jack Grealish did enough to be starting, but I don't think he's warranted being cut from a 26-man squad, because Harry's played for England in the past. And when you start leaving out players like that are popular members among the squad, then you forget that you've got these 3 or 4 weeks together, and then, you know, they do start asking questions about the manager and am I next? You know, I thought he was a loyal guy, Gareth Southgate, but apparently not. And all those silly little things.
Are we getting into that? I mean, I remember sitting with Roy Keane before the last Euros, and someone said, well, he's going to take Henderson because he's good around the place. And Roy says, well, what is he good at? What does he do the karaoke and do the quizzes? You know, at the end of the day, it's not about that, is it? It's about building the team that he thinks is going to win the Euros. And the stats don't lie here, right? If you look at Grealish and Maddison's numbers, their numbers are starkly different to Foden's, Palmer's, Gordon's, Bowen's, Saka, Bellingham, even Eze. Eze's played a similar number of minutes to both those two over the course of the season.
But that's for their clubs.
He has more goals, and he has more assists, does double the amount of assists for Grealish. Yeah, for their clubs.
Yeah.
But that is, neither Grealish or Maddison have come up with a hell of a lot of goals and assists for England either. I mean, look at Grealish's goals for England. 2 of them out of the 3, I think, came against Andorra.
But the other point, I think, is you look at Eze. Yes, he's been outstanding, but he's been outstanding for Crystal Palace. He's got very little international experience, let alone tournament experience.
Yeah, but he was very good on Monday night.
Yeah, but the pressure of pulling on that England shirt in a competitive major tournament is very different from what he's used to at club level.
I just think, though, what we've seen with a lot of these players, these youngsters coming in, where it has taken, we had Frank Lampard, didn't we, on recently, and he said it took me 10, 12 caps to get used to feeling like I'm a proper England player. A lot of these kids nowadays, they're coming on and it's almost like bang, straight into it. I 100% get what you're saying. And Roy Keane was an incredible player, a Premier League great, but I think he probably didn't integrate too well, whether you have good lads or not, in terms of the thing.
What are you trying to say?
What I'm trying to say is, it is right. You do have to think about the lads, because there is a lot of downtime, and hopefully we will go all the way as well. But at the same time, I just think the other ones have done so well, and Jack Grealish hasn't been called upon, that there's an argument for it. And the bottom line is, we're already saying, well, this, that, no, yes. I mean, how difficult is it? Whatever Gareth decision he made, There's always going to be someone saying, I didn't agree with that, I didn't agree with that.
But does it come back to
Alan
Alan
Hansen? For the last 2
Hansen?
years you've been saying get rid of Harry Maguire, now you're saying bring him back.
Well, yeah, call me a hypocrite. You're right, but it's the old adage, he's never let England down. People would argue, well, actually, he did in that France game. He lost his marker and England get knocked out of the World Cup. But his performances for England largely have been much better than they have for Manchester United. And I just wonder, is there a danger? They've won 1 out of 4 games in the calendar year, England, so they've got no momentum at all against this tournament. Is it too much change too quickly?
Well, interesting. By the way, Roy Keane's very good in the ITV dressing room.
I'm sure he is.
He's the one
I'm
who
sure
who gets everybody going.
He does the jokes.
He does. He's fantastic at them. Right, defence. That's the area where England have got a real problem. And I mentioned about the injuries and the issues that they've had even going into this situation. But, Trippier playing on the left-hand side. Talk to me about how, obviously we need a left-foot specialist at left-back. But how damaging is it that Trippier plays out there? There's no left-footer in that back line at all.
Well, I think this is exactly why Harry Maguire hasn't gone, because he's had to risk Luke Shaw because of the lack of balance on the left, and Gareth quite simply didn't want to gamble with 2. And I've been supportive of Harry Maguire for a very long time, but to wait until the 4th game and still don't know how fit you're going to be. There's one thing between being fit and being match fit in the real deep end of the tournament. So therefore, if you're going to risk one, you have to risk Luke Shaw, because of the balance that he can give, because of that left side that he is able to go down. And Kieran Trippier, I think, is a wonderful player. I think you can rely on him so much. But in terms of trying to get down that left-hand side, if a Gordon or probably more likely a Foden that comes in off the left, and you want him someone to bomb on, it's more likely to be a Luke Shaw. Even if he's 80% fit, then it is 100% fit Kieran Trippier, just because he's not used to that. And he also, whenever he receives the ball, he's always going to come inside and look up rather than looking down there where you can see the whole picture. So I don't blame Gareth Southgate at all for risking Luke Shaw. We have got a real dearth of quality English left-sided players, really, haven't we? Or certainly left-backs.
Yeah. What about in midfield, Terry? Because that's been an area of a lot of conjecture. England have got a lot of players at the top end of the pitch. In midfield, we've been searching for someone to play alongside Declan Rice, because Henderson and Phillips are the old guard. They've gone. They've been quite brave. They brought in Wharton and Kobbie Mainoo, 2 younger players who probably have got fantastic futures at England level. But is this a tournament too early for them? And are you expecting him to be a little bit more pragmatic and try and maybe sort of crook Alexander-Arnold, who's wearing the number 8 shirt, by the way, at the European Championships, or Conor Gallagher maybe alongside him, a little bit more of a defensive move?
I think Conor Gallagher might be the obvious one, but this sums up the squad to me that it looks like we're not ready.
Yeah.
There's too many. Well, will he play? Who's going to play there? We haven't seen Jude Bellingham play in the 2 games yet, so we don't even know where Jude Bellingham is going to play. And where Jude Bellingham plays makes up the rest of the team, because we've seen what he's done this year for Real Madrid, where he's playing for there, and will he play there for England, or will he play a double pivot alongside Declan Rice in midfield? Then you could get Phil Foden in the more central role in front of those 2. So it just looks to me like we're not ready, and we've got 2 or 3 players there that are not very much experience in terms of international football, in terms of Premier League football. And when you look at the numbers of the squad, it's surprising to me that we've got 9 attackers and only 6 midfielders, and one of those is Trent Alexander-Arnold. I just think we're lacking numbers in there. It's a surprising way to build up, in my opinion, a 26-man squad.
The only thing I'd say about that is that your first 3 group games at this tournament in particular are almost a little bit like your warm-up games.
Yeah, but
because...
Don't say that.
No,
dangerous.
They're not.
Do
do you remember Algeria, USA, that
Serbia,
group?
Denmark and Slovenia.
When was that?
Hard to
Well,
beat.
you're going back a bit,
It was 14 years ago.
But English arrogance.
hold on.
English arrogance. We've
Hold
gone
on.
into tournaments
Hold on,
before
you're
and
not-
thought
but
we'll
you're
breeze the
but You're
group.
not listening to what I'm saying. You're just going on about historical situations. What I was going to say is because 3 teams qualify,
Yeah.
there is not as much pressure on those group games as there would have been in 2010, which is the tournament that Crook is talking about.
But we don't want to finish second.
You don't want to finish second, and you don't want to
Play
finish
France.
third. You want to win you want to win the group. However, what you want to do is qualify. So there isn't as much pressure on those first 3 games of the tournament, which is why at the last Euros, for example, he was able to take Harry Maguire when he wasn't 100% fit, because he didn't have to use him until later down the line. That was the point I was making. Terry, Jude Bellingham, where does he play for Real Madrid, for those who haven't seen them over the course of the whole season? Because he's done a variety, we've done games together. He's played in a variety of positions.
Exactly. I think everyone has assumed he's playing the number 10 role. that's not been the case in every single match. Some games, yes, he's played left side in the midfield 4, which is where he started in the Champions League for 10 minutes and then drifted inside.
Yeah.
He's played as number 9. There's been games where you're thinking Jude Bellingham is the centre forward here today. And Ancelotti he figured it out, as Ancelotti does. As the season goes along, he thinks, I haven't got Benzema, I haven't got this player, I haven't got this player. Ancelotti just figured it out. From day one, Bellingham just lit the place up, scored on his debut at Athletic Club. And then I think 5 in his first 4 games. And it was, where are we going to play him this week? They needed to unleash him to get the player in the box. So he gets involved in the build-up, ball goes wide, and he's got that drive and determination to get himself into goal-scoring position. I mean, 19 goals in La Liga. It suggests that's where he should play for England, but I don't think we've got the other players that allow him to play in that position.
So where do you think he will play for England? Where do you think he should play?
Personally, I would play him as a double pivot with Declan Rice and then play Phil Foden ahead of them. Kane up front, Bukayo Saka and Palmer, Bowen, Eze, Anthony Gordon, one of those on the left.
Is there an argument for playing a little bit like Manchester City, where they play with the back 4, Rodri would play as the one sort of holder, Rice can play that role for England, and then you play Saka, Bellingham, Foden and Gordon. Can you do that?
Yeah, I think you can, because Bellingham's an intelligent enough player. You know, he can almost play alongside Rice when England don't have the ball, and he can move into that more advanced role when England do have the ball. And what we know about the group, and you've alluded to it, they're going to dominate possession, certainly in the group stage. Maybe he needs to change his role slightly when they get into the knockout stages, particularly if, as we expect, they reach the semi-finals and they play France. But back to Terry's earlier point, I can't remember a tournament under Gareth Southgate where we've gone into it with so many question marks in terms of who plays where. I think the last few tournaments that Gareth Southgate has taken charge of, certainly the last 2, you can sort of pick 10 of the 11.
Could you have done that in Qatar? We didn't have a warm-up game for Qatar.
I think you knew the team in Qatar, and I also don't think we've learned anything from these last 2 friendlies. No, we've not learned anything in terms of different playing styles, in terms of pattern of play.
No one's turned around and said, "Pick me, Gareth."
No.
Yeah, look, I feel I'm defending Gareth here, and I'm happy to, actually, because I do think in terms of the squad selection, there's always going to be 60 million English managers who think they can pick a better squad, and in this particular thing as well. He was absolutely right, and you saw Real Madrid much more than any of us, Gibbo. He looked tired. He's had a few little niggles as well, and injuries.
He did.
And clearly the stats will say, and I don't go on stats, the first half of the season was better than the second half, but still he was a big player for Real Madrid. We need him in peak mental and physical condition, which meant that Gareth was right to say, have the week off. Just get away, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And you're also right to say, where Bellingham plays, then it almost just comes out where everyone else is going to play. We didn't know that because he wasn't around. So I feel for Gareth in that particular spot. The question is, where does he play? I'm with you. It's almost not a 4-1-4-1 or a 4-2-3-1. I think he can be that hybrid between, we need a bit of help alongside Rice in a particular part of the game.
That's what he is.
Ancelotti type, read the game as you see it.
All purpose.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And get forward when
He's
possible.
a fielder, isn't he?
Yeah, he'll be involved with Declan Rice deep, and he'll play the ball forward, and then he goes. And then he gets back. And then he goes. And then he gets back. So you don't want him just sitting there holding.
No, and my problem is, and because it's all very fluid, if Foden does play in the left, for example, he can come inside, and Bellingham can push on, and people. So it's not just a set formation. My problem is that I don't think Gareth will want that, because I think he'll want that almost the 2. Pretty much we know both of those are holding midfielders, double pivots, in front of what we know is also a vulnerable back 4.
Because he's always been
Bellingham
pragmatic.
will want to push forward.
But some would argue that this is a new ruthless Gareth Southgate. He's got rid of Rashford, he's got rid of Grealish, he's got rid of Harry Maguire. All of a sudden it's all changed, so maybe the mindset's changing.
Yeah, maybe, and we won't know until Bellingham's back in.
It's a great point Scott made about Bellingham looking jaded. Because I think a lot of people only saw the Champions League games. So he wasn't at his best against City, wasn't at his best against Bayern and Dortmund in the final. But he did get 5 goals in his last 8 La Liga games. He did have a couple of injuries, a suspension. So he didn't play as much in the second half. But he did look jaded playing in that position Real Madrid asked him to. In all of those games where he was too advanced. So he was playing with his back to goal when he was relying on service from other people. That was the problem with Jude Bellingham in those matches, because I think Real Madrid
he was holding the ball up, wasn't he? He was the platform from which they were trying to build off.
They couldn't get out against City. because he was the one that was up front and it was foreign to him. It's not what he's used to. And as a striker, I know you rely on service from others, so it'd be interesting. I just think where he plays dictates the rest of the squad.
but if you
Hopefully he plays. We don't know the new Gareth Southgate, do we?
But if you play Foden as a 10 and you do play Rice and Bellingham as the 2 in front of the back 4, you are gambling on somebody relatively inexperienced at international level on the left-hand side. I was in favour of Marcus Rashford being left out of the squad. He's been dreadful for Manchester United this season. He needed a wake-up call. But I'd have taken one of him or Grealish for that tournament experience, even just to come off the bench and provide a little bit of spark up against tired defences. I'm surprised he's left both out.
Interesting. Okay. Let's talk about the opponents that they've got. Serbia is the first game. The people that I've spoken to in Serbia suggest that they're very good at scoring goals, but they will let in goals in equal measure as well, which will bode well for England. Well, I spoke to a Danish football commentator on the Sunday session the other week, and his view on Denmark was, and from what I've seen of Denmark doing the research, is that they're nowhere near as good as they were a couple of years ago when they were the coming force, and Rasmus Højlund obviously is their forward now, but Kasper Hjulmand, who is their coach, was sort of like the Pep Guardiola of Danish football, and it was all going to be progressive. They're a little bit more pragmatic now, and they will go to try and draw with England. That's the kind of feeling that they've given me, that they're going to try and come and get a point off England. And then you've got the last group game against Slovenia, who I think are just happy to be there. They're not a great team. You know, they think they should be better than they are, but they do have a couple of big talents, and Benjamin Šeško is one of those. So, you know, it was not going to be an easy group, but I do think it's a group that England should come through, and that's not being arrogant, just looking at the teams themselves, they should come through. But they are going to face what they faced against Iceland, yes, and what they face against Bosnia, which is teams that sit in, and you've got to unlock them.
Absolutely. I was looking at Crookie there to see if you'd turn around and say, you know, that English arrogance again. But on paper,
no, I agree.
On paper we should. But on paper we should have beaten Iceland by 3 or 4, and it didn't happen. So I think in that sense, while you don't want to see a very disjointed side and losing at home to a team with respect to Iceland, it will give us that little kick up the backside. It will make sure there's absolutely zero complacency. We know that the Serbia have good forwards as well. So and our weakness is defence. But we also know we'll probably have about 70% possession. And all 3 teams will be delighted to have a draw against us, which means, don't care who you're playing against, anyone who's well organised, you'll find it difficult to break down. So that first team that he picks, Gareth, is going to be absolutely fascinating. And that's why I probably would, because I don't think he will go Bellingham and Rice as the double pivot. I'd like to see Trent in that position.
Once you get through the group stages, last 16 is likely to be a third place team. If they win the group, then it's on to the quarterfinals. They'll play a big hitter, semi-finals big hitter, final big hitter, if they get that far. So the question now, before we move on to everybody else, is how far will they get? Let's start with the most pessimistic man in the room, Crook.
I've got them down for losing to France in the semi-finals, as I think a lot of the English public have. But I have to say, I mean, the 4 warm-up games, you go back to March, and these last 2, I'm a little bit less confident about that, but I've gone semi-finals.
Terry?
We have to win the group, because then I see us getting at quarterfinals. I don't see us as one of the best 4 teams in this competition, I'm afraid to say.
More pessimistic than me.
I know it's very rare for someone to go against what everyone else is saying, that we're going to win it. It's the best team we've had. It's a new generation. I think we've been blinded by the fact we have 4 or 5 outstanding players amongst world football. We really do. But then I look at the rest of the team and the squad now, and I think we have half a team.
Yeah, I think they're weaker than they were in Qatar. So I think semi-finals would be a very good performance.
Isn't that left-back position so important?
It is. Yeah. If only you were 20 years younger.
and a lot better. Luke Shaw, I just think if you've got Kyle Walker one side and Luke Shaw on the other, you know, even if John Stones is not 100% fit, the defence doesn't look as vulnerable. And yet at this moment in time, how can you say that they're going to go and beat the France side that could probably play their second side and still arguably be one of the favourites for the tournament?
This squad's incredible, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We'll get there in just a second. So what's your prediction?
I'm going for. I've been really confident up until the last week or so, but I'm probably going to say I don't think we can beat France in the semis.
So these talked you down.
No. What did you say,
Crook?
Gibbo? Quarters?
Quarterfinals, yeah.
Quarters, semis.
I'm going semis with France. Yeah, I don't think we'll get past France as it stands. But you never
Depends
know.
on who we play, doesn't it?
We're an optimistic bunch.
If we
aren't
finish second in our group, we
Do you
play
know
France.
What? Do you know what? I'll cross my fingers, and I really hope that England do it. I really, really, really do. But I do think when you study it and you look at it, you sort of realise just how good everybody else is as well. And I think that's worth pointing out. So let's delve in to who could be the other contenders. And let's start off by talking about teams that have done it before. Scott's been looking at France. Their squad looks even deeper than England's. Look at their defence. Upamecano, Konate, Saliba, all vying for first 11 places. They've enticed N'Golo Conte back from semi-retirement. He hasn't played for 2 years for the national team. He actually played 42 games in Saudi Arabia, and apparently, as far as I understand it, looks very, very fit. He forms part of an experienced squad, doesn't he?
Do you know what? I look at them and I just think, as you know, I just alluded to the fact that they're second string. You know, you talk about strength and depth, and that's probably what countries do need to win tournaments. You need a bit of luck, but if you can't guarantee you're going to get any luck. So you look at the squads, and I know you're going to mention another side that I wanted to pick as well, Crookie.
I've pulled rank.
You've pulled rank, yeah, something like that. I look at France and I look at how strong they are. I look at even their defence. Arguably, you could say maybe right back if Koundé is there, maybe Pavard is not quite at the level of everybody else, and yet they're still very good players.
I think
Barcelona
exactly. Look, Mbappe for me is the best player in the world. I think he is. I think if there's one player you want to pick, and you know, you've got the world to try and save, who would you pick? He probably would be Mbappe. I think Griezmann is probably just as important to France as well. I think he's fantastic. You would have seen him a lot this season, and you know, it probably no coincidence, though it may be complacency. They lost to Germany, and he didn't play in that game for the first time in a good few years. But then you look at the midfield. You know, you're still not quite sure who's going to play. You know. And
well, they're going to play
because
Conte,
of the
Griezmann, and they're going to play Rabiot, aren't they?
Well, Rabiot, Tchouaméni, Camavinga.
Yeah.
I think Rabiot's further up the pecking order.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know,
With Deschamps.
Yeah.
Dembele, Thuram, Mbappe,
I know.
you know, with all the players to come off the bench. And from a mental side point of view, Didier Deschamps has been there, seen it, done it as a player and a manager as well. He knows how to win major tournaments. Okay, you know, the last, obviously, with the World Cup, it went down to a penalty shootout. The last time they played in the Euros, they were 3-1 up with 10 minutes to go against Switzerland, probably just switched off, more for complacency.
Yep.
Went to penalties again. It's a lottery that way. I don't see how a top-class player can just think we're going to win this easy and not win the Euros because of complacency, but I don't see a weakness in them. I really don't.
But it doesn't look like there is. And if you look at the squad, it is. I mean, they're only taking 25 as well, by the way. They're not taking 26 because I think it's to do with the fact that if you take the 3 goalkeepers out, they can play 11 against 11, right, in training, and it's easier. It's a nicer, rounder number to work with.
That's confidence, though, isn't it?
That's
some may say arrogance. I'd say confidence, but
Yeah, but Crook would probably say arrogance.
he probably would.
So he wouldn't, because he's not English. So he would say,
Is it
yeah, okay.
arrogance or whatever
Yeah,
it is?
what would you say?
I feel for the third goalkeeper.
Yeah.
He's going to be
He'd
I'm
be
not
sitting
playing.
out, wouldn't he? Yeah.
Well,
Sat watching training with a nice cigar, I'd imagine.
they have a tough group, though, don't they? Because they've got Austria, Netherlands and Poland.
Yeah, actually, I was at a Euros preview evening yesterday, as you've alluded to, and one of our European experts said that Austria, 85 to 1, I think a lot of bookmakers could be dark horses. I obviously can't have that because of Ralf Rangnick, but
They've done really well.
they've got some good players.
And they've played really well.
Yeah, and then you look at the Netherlands, who we're not really talking about, defensively. If England are weak defensively, you look at the Netherlands, certainly in terms of centre-backs, they're very strong in that area. Memphis Depay gets a lot of stick, but he has scored a lot of goals for the national team. I think he's closing in on maybe becoming one of their record goal scorers.
Yeah, he hasn't played a lot of football, though, has he?
No, so that could be an issue. But it's a tougher group than England have got. It's a tougher group than Germany have got, for sure. So I guess in some ways that could help France, though, because it means they're going to have to be on their mettle right from the start of the tournament to avoid any banana skins. I think, actually, in terms of reaching the final, only France can really stop themselves. When you look at the calibre of player that the Scots just listed off there, Mbappe didn't particularly finish the season in great form because he checked out to go to Real Madrid. But again, that means he might come in fresh and with a point to prove, having got that big money move. That they look very strong.
They are an amazing team, and it's remarkable, really, Dembele, Thuram, Mbappe as the front three. We've already mentioned the midfield. There's options that are on the bench that haven't been
Saliba can't get in the
mentioned.
side, can he?
Saliba doesn't get in the team because apparently Didier Deschamps does things I don't like. According to Deschamps, he just does things I don't like. So I don't know what they are, but he's got reservations about him. He said that during the international break in March. And also, Didier Deschamps isn't the most loved. It's not like everyone sits at home in France and goes, oh, they're brilliant, this team that have got to the finals of the Euros in 2016, won the World Cup in 2018, got to the World Cup final in 2022, and probably one of the favourites, probably should be the favourites for this tournament. But it's not like there's universal love for them, because a bit like Gareth Southgate, and one of the reasons that Gareth sort of steered England down this path was because of France. They play quite a pragmatic brand of football.
Yes.
They're quite happy for you to have the ball. They're quite happy to counter-attack because they've got the talents to do that. And they believe that defences win tournaments, which is where Gareth has always been coming from, because he's looked at France, looked how successful they have been.
He looked at Portugal 2016 and France 2018.
He did, absolutely. And because they sort of seen where tournament winners come from, that's why they focus on that. And then France are a bit like that as well. They're not the most entertaining to watch. Germany, you're going to really love watching. Portugal, you're probably going to really love watching. But France, maybe not so much, but they do play in moments. Talking of Portugal, go for it. Unleash us on your research, because you've actually done a bit of scouting, haven't you? You've gone out to Portugal.
He did. It's very good of him.
Well, very good of you.
So professional.
And gone to watch them when they played Luxembourg. What did you learn from that 9-0 thrashing?
Was he in the Algarve?
Yeah, it was.
He also went out there a couple of weeks ago just to speak to people and see how
just
they're
to
feeling.
I asked him to go to Gibraltar versus Scotland, and he went, no, tickets too expensive.
65 euros. And FA Cup winner Scott McTominay wasn't even playing. So no, I didn't go to that game. But I did watch Portugal against Luxembourg. Luxembourg actually, obviously, they're not a great international side, but they weren't completely terrible in that group. I don't think Portugal were expected to thrash them as much as they did. They are the only team to come through qualifying with a 100% record. Again, it wasn't the strongest group in the world. Their detractors will say Ronaldo's going to be an issue as he was at the World Cup. I think Martinez actually has found a way to play with him at the figurehead of the team without necessarily being the man that they rely on. There seems to be a good harmony in the camp, which maybe there wasn't at the World Cup. Obviously, Pepe is not getting any younger, but in Ruben Diaz alongside him, he's got one of the best centre-backs in the world. You've got Bernardo Silva, who was excellent in the run-in for Manchester City. Rafael Leao, who's got pace to burn, and he did really well in qualifying. So I think it's a really talented Portugal squad. Again, if you're going to find reasons they won't win it, your pal Roberto Martinez would be right up there.
He's a good lad.
Yeah, but he's not necessarily a great manager, certainly when it comes to defensive discipline.
World Cup semi-final manager.
But he didn't do great with Belgium at the last World Cup, did he? So I think there are question marks there. The big reason I picked out Portugal is because if the draw pans out as we expect, they're going to find themselves on the opposite side of the draw to England and France. I think that gives them a massive advantage right from the off.
Yeah.
A lot of people seem to fancy Portugal. Great squad, yes. 3 Saudi-based players and a 41-year-old Pepe expected to play at centre-back. You look at their squad, the talent is dripping from every single angle of it. Diaz, Danilo, Pepe, I've already mentioned. 2 choices at full-back in both positions. Like some great, great players. Midfield to die for. Striking and forward options, João Felix, Jota, Ronaldo, Gonzalo Ramos, Rafael Leao. You know, it's unbelievable the squad that they have got. They should win it. It will be disappointed if they don't win it. It's a typical crookie pick. It is out. They should be
a massive price. They're 4 favourites.
But they shouldn't be, should they? They shouldn't be.
No.
They shouldn't be 4 favourites.
No, they shouldn't. And I have faith in Roberto Martinez. I think managers get experience as they go along, and I think he will acknowledge there is going to be an issue though. There's an elephant in the room with Ronaldo. Does he play every game?
He's managed that situation very well up until this point.
But it's different in a competition where you're living together for 3 or 4 weeks.
True.
Maybe longer if you've had the build-up and everything that goes with it. Is he going to play every game? If he doesn't, is it going to affect? Should he play every game? Because the level of players we're looking at now, this isn't a Ronaldo who's 27. It's Ronaldo's 37, 38. So it's going to be interesting to see how that manifests itself in a group where you're together for a month. Well, there might be. I think we've seen it in the past, haven't we? You're thinking, well, he shouldn't be playing in this game.
But
he should be taken off. But managers in the past have been like, I don't want to take him off. It's Ronaldo.
But we're seeing Ronaldo as a negative, right? This is one of the greatest players the game has ever seen. His last European Championships, possibly his last international tournament. Could it not be a Messi scenario where he finds a way to carry Portugal to victory?
Written in the stars.
Yeah.
Look, I did want Portugal, but I sort of backed off because obviously he only went there last week, so he said that means that it's my choice.
He blags a free trip there every now and again.
Absolutely.
So he's almost Portuguese.
I love that country. Amazing country, amazing food, amazing weather, amazing people.
Great beer.
Great beer. Well, you may say that. I couldn't possibly comment.
We should point out Scott played there and was at one time, and actually a Portuguese editor of a Portuguese paper said to me this week, Scott Minto was probably talked about as one of the best left backs that Benfica had for a very, very long time.
For at least a couple of months. No, and it was very kind of him to say that. But my point is, I've got a special place for Portugal, and I always look out for them, you know, how they're doing. But you look at the squad, as Crookie was saying, I completely understand why Crookie almost wanted an arm wrestle with me to choose Portugal. Because, again, we talked about France and strength in depth. Portugal definitely have that. I do kind of agree with him as well. I don't like the fact I'm agreeing with him so much. But there's the Roberto Martinez thing. Now, there was the golden generation of Belgium. It didn't quite happen. I do think they met a France side in 2018 that quite simply were destined to win and were just a machine at that time. Belgium were the second best team in the world. We've got, like Portugal, it's the same with England, very good going forwards. Defensively, they're saying that there's a slight weakness there. I don't see Pep being 40, 41 being an issue. I still think he's a brilliant professional.
Still playing well.
Yeah.
But like England as well, they do talk about, or it is talked about, there's a manager who can he see his team over the line. And until he does it, the question marks will be asked. But he has managed Ronaldo really well. I do think Ronaldo will start but not finish the tournament. I can see Gonzalo Ramos coming off the bench many times and scoring some goals. And we'll see what happens, how that develops. How a team starts a tournament can be very different to how a team ends a tournament, especially up front.
You sound about like Gareth Southgate when he's talking about Phil Foden's position. Where he starts doesn't matter, it's where he finishes up that is important.
Absolutely.
Do you know what's really interesting though from these chats? You've mentioned Didier Deschamps and the fact the French public haven't really bought into him. Didi Hamann was saying to me there's still doubts about Nagelsmann amongst the German supporters. Obviously there's a lot of England fans who are not behind or believing in Gareth Southgate. The Portuguese don't believe in Roberto Martinez. One of these managers got to prove them wrong and win it.
Ralph Rangnick's very popular in Austria.
Just not in Manchester.
Let's talk about Germany because I've been looking at them in a bit of detail. No one thought, I think, that they would be able to compete if you went back to November when Julian Nagelsmann takes over as the manager, sort of late autumn, October or November, because Hansi Flick had an absolute disaster. 3 embarrassing major tournament exits, group stage at the World Cup, last 16 knocked out by England at the Euros, group stage at the last World Cup. As far as, for a country like Germany that have had a history of producing such great teams and great moments, that is more than embarrassing. But actually, Nagelsmann started to turn the fortunes round a little bit, especially the March internationals, which were a key indicator against good opponents in the Netherlands and France. But that triumvirate that they're going to start with, I think, which is Florian Wirtz, Musiala and Havertz, have actually come up with a really good sort of combination. And they play some good football, they can create chances, and I think they'll cause problems for anybody during the course of the tournament. Nagelsmann has been in the job for just a short amount of time, and he's really determined to sort of show people that the mistake that he made at Bayern, he can put behind him. He's determined to show that actually they were a little bit foolhardy in getting rid of him that early. He also is well renowned as a tactical genius, really. I mean, he makes tweaks that have big impacts in-game and before games. But he also admitted that he is not going to overload his players with tactical information because he knows that in an international football setting, you don't have the time to absorb all of that. And if you look at Luis Enrique with Spain back in Qatar, the overloading of the information, I think, probably constricted them a little bit, especially towards the latter part of that tournament, because there was almost sort of double think going on as to where they should be and how they should, be doing things, because the manager was so prescriptive about how he wanted to play with them. Look at the team they've got. When you really think about it, the back line is very good. Schlotterbeck got to a Champions League final. So did Rudiger, the 2 centre halves. The goalkeeper Neuer is incredibly good. Kimmich's gone back to full-back because Kroos has come into the centre of midfield. He's world-class. At 34, he's retiring. He should never be retiring. He's brilliant. He's fantastic. We've seen that this season, you and I. It's allowed Gundogan to go on and play further up the pitch. Florian Wirtz is fantastic, so is Musiala. Leverkusen have been unbeaten pretty much all of the season. There's people like Andrik from there who've done a fantastic job. And then you've got Havertz, who actually seems to have found his place in the team. Look, I don't think they'll necessarily win it, but I think there'll be a story. And go back to 2006 and the euphoria that accompanied that young Klinsmann team going through the tournament when no one really expected anything. I think you could see a bit of that again.
And home advantage as well. So,
Yeah.
but then they need a good start. I'm not as confident as you that I think it's 50-50 because where they've been recently, and when you look at the squad of players, you think, well, why have they been like that in the last couple of years? Why have they suffered? Why have they struggled? I know there's been change of management, which hasn't helped along the way. So Joachim Löw left. They haven't really been able to find anyone to do the job properly. And so I think it's in the balance. I think the pressure of being host nation as well can be a disadvantage. So if they get off to a good start, then everyone gets behind them. Then there's a bit of belief. Then all that previous, the cloud that's been hanging over them disappears, and then you get some momentum. So, but I'm not convinced they're at their best yet, I have to be honest.
But your Adidas mate's telling you about it.
Well, not my Adidas mates, but I mentioned to you that Didi Hamann isn't particularly confident in the coach, isn't particularly confident in this group of players. He felt the France victory was maybe more as a result of the fact the French weren't really bothered about that game. And I look at the group, Scotland, I think, are decent opening night opponents, but they're maybe capable of causing an upset. I know you don't think Switzerland are a great side going to this tournament. Hungary, a bit of a dark horse for me.
Hungary are on the longest unbeaten run in Europe.
Yeah, and obviously hammered England in the Nations League a couple of years ago, beat them home and away, got good results against Germany in that competition as well, unbeaten in 2023. I think in terms of the group, it wouldn't completely surprise me if Hungary were to top it and Germany might have to settle for second place.
Interesting opening night against Scotland. We'll talk about Scotland in just a second. Spain. Talked about being slightly less tactically straitjacketed. Spain, compared to Qatar, certainly are. The squad has got an element of youth about it. The youngest player ever to play at Euros will be Lamine Yamal.
25 years between him and Pepe. It's like two different tournaments. It's an under-17 player and an under-42 age group, veterans football.
Is he taking his GCSEs out there, or? You know?
I think he might have done his back last year, but he's got the equivalent of A levels haven't started yet. Luis de la Fuente though hasn't got much experience, a bit like the squad. Some members of the squad. Will that be a hindrance or a help?
Again, I'm really. People have asked me about Spain's chances. They could win it, but they might not make it out of the group. It's a tough group. Italy and Croatia and Albania. It's a really tough group. And it wouldn't be a massive surprise to me if they finish third in the group. But I believe they will go through, and then it's up in the air with Spain. The expectation levels in Spain at the moment are not massive. There isn't a huge deal of pressure on. They won the Nations competition, the Nations League competition. There are one or two players missing they could have done with through injury. They've got a problem left back as well.
Marc Cucurella is going to start.
Yeah. Gaia, who would play, has been injured. Balde in Barcelona probably would have been the next choice. He's injured. So they've gone down to Grimaldo and Cucurella. Scoring goals.
Grimaldo, by the way.
Yeah,
I do like Grimaldo.
Yeah, so I think they're all right in that position. It's not. They've got two left backs, so they can both play there.
Can we borrow one?
Kubasi was left out, which was a little bit of a surprise, to be honest.
Yes, because he's been playing for Barcelona. He's only young as well. He's another very young player. Yeah.
I thought he would go for, and he is that good. But whether he would have started or not, I'm not so sure. I think Lennon went.
He's terrific. I mean, this is a guy who's come from La Masia. He's come into the Barcelona team. He's playing at centre half, week in, week out. Jules Koundé is playing as a right back. Christensen's been pushed into midfield. This is how good he is. They want to get him in the team at Barcelona. So, I mean, maybe it's a tournament too early at 17. You can't take too many 17-year-olds.
And this about the Olympics. He's going to the Olympics instead. Playing as a 16, 17-year-old attacking player is different to being a 16, 17-year-old defender, because he was 16 earlier in the season. You need that manpower, you need that physicality and that strength to deal with being a central defender. So you don't often get 16, 17-year-olds becoming a regular.
But do you not feel he showed that playing for his club and the pressure that brings week in,
he has. Yeah, I mean, he's coped.
It's brilliant.
The physical aspect of the game has not been a problem at all. But that's quite unusual and he doesn't look particularly imposing, but he's, you know, Osimhen in the Champions League, everyone was, look, how's he going to deal with that? And he was aggressive and a little bit too aggressive at times. He puts his foot in and he can be nasty. And it's a bit of a surprise that he's come out. The team, I think they've still got quality players. Pedri was a big plus at the end of the season. He'd been struggling, missed a lot of football. He has done for 2 years now. And when he got back in this year, is he ever going to be the same again? It was one of those, you're wondering whether he was going to be another Ansu Fati where he never got his form back, or hasn't got his form back. And then by the end of the season, the last 3 or 4 games, he looked like Pedri of old. So that's massively important. Isco's a big miss, believe it or not. If it wasn't for Bellingham, Isco would have been Player of the Year this year in La Liga. And he picked up an injury the last couple of games of the season. So there's going to be a lot of familiarity with how they play. In the last World Cup, as you said, under Luis Enrique, they passed the ball just for the sake of it. It was too slow, it was too predictable. They got what they deserved. They got hammered by Morocco 3-0 and went out in that. So I think the expectation levels in Spain are realistic, to be honest. They're not looking at this as the team that won everything for 3 consecutive tournaments, but they're in that group, like so many others, that could win it if they get the confidence, get the belief. They've got enough players there that could win it. Rodri is obviously pivotal to them.
We haven't mentioned Belgium and we haven't mentioned Italy, who are the holders of the European Championship, so no one's talking about them. They've had an unbelievable Euros record over the years. They can't qualify for a World Cup, but the Euros is where they come alive. They've got a new manager in Spalletti, who, even if they get to the final, a bit like Nagelsmann, wouldn't have been in charge for a year yet. 2021 they were winners. 2016 they went out on penalties in the quarterfinals to Germany. 2012 they were finalists. 2008 they went out in the quarters to the eventual winners Spain. They have been Euro stalwarts over the course of the last 10-15 years. The scoring goal is a bit of an issue for them. They actually took Scamacca out of the squad in March because he sort of had a bit of a falling out with Spalletti. But he's back in now, and he scored basically in every game in the back end of the season. Yeah, I don't think he scored in the final of the Europa League, but he did very well towards the end of the season. Donnarumma's come into a little bit of scrutiny, but he's the captain of the team. He's a good goalkeeper. So they've got a chance as maybe big dark horses, but they're 14 to 1. They were 14 to 1 for the last Euros, but they ended up winning that. We've spoken about host Germany. Their opening game is against Scotland. So let's have a look at how the Tartan Army are going to get on. 100,000 members of the Tartan Army are on their way to Germany to follow Scotland, and I think it's going to be a great occasion, the opening game. Germany, the host nation, Scotland with all of their colour that they bring and noise. And actually, do you know what? I'm not as pessimistic as the world's most pessimistic man, Crookie, who was nicknamed at the last Euros Jock McCrook, because he'd completely ditched England and decided to become a fully fledged Scotsman because he was covering them. But now he's got a very different take. Now he's like the global football correspondent. They're gone. The Tartan's gone. The Tartan trousers are gone. He doesn't speak to Jim White anymore. Christopher Wellamo has been blocked on WhatsApp. So what's going to happen?
Well, Jim still owes me £500 for my charity bet, by the way, so you just reminded me about that. I was in the Scotland camp for the last tournament. I think it was a little bit...
That was 3 years ago.
But there was a little bit of expectation.
By the way, I'm glad he's not wearing the kilt, because for this angle,
on
you won't say anything, don't worry.
On home soil, and I thought they were really poor in that tournament, to be honest. See, that there were games in that group that they should have been more competitive in. They weren't. I think this looks a tougher group. They've got the host nation. We got Hungary. We talked about already as having some real quality in their ranks, and I'm not quite as down on Switzerland as you are. I still think they've got plenty of tournament experience and some decent players. So I can't see. Scotland need to win one game probably to finish in the top 3, and I can't see where that win is coming from. I think losing Lyndon Dykes to an injury the week before they were due to submit the 26-man squad is a big blow. Shea Adams is a workhorse, but is he really going to bang in goals in a major international tournament? I think Scott McTominay might end up being their top goal scorer, by the way.
He was top scorer in qualifying. Not too many players across Europe that scored more goals than him. I think only Mbappe, Kane and Ronaldo scored more goals in qualifying than Scott McTominay got 7.
Am I right? I think Scotland haven't won a game at a major tournament since Ali McCoy scored against Switzerland in Euro 96.
And
is that right?
Switzerland's going to be the key game.
Yeah, I think they have to win that one. That's the one they will be focusing on.
That when you go to the ACDC concert. That's
But I just don't see
I'll
it.
ask you about it in Munich when we're at the game.
I think in this tournament it's almost harder to not qualify with only 8 teams going home, but I do think Scotland will be one of the 8 who go.
He's actually been a little bit more positive than he was to us outside, because what did you say before?
I don't think they get a point.
I'm not as pessimistic at all on this. I watched the 2 games against Gibraltar and against Finland, and actually, you know, Gibraltar, they should have won. Any other day, they would win that 6-0. They had so many chances. Obviously, putting the ball in the back of the net is a massive problem for him. Lawrence Shankland has scored a lot of goals in the Scottish League, but he hasn't translated that yet. He did get a goal against Finland on Friday night, and a lot of people were going, oh, they didn't beat Finland. They ended up dropping two goals towards the end, and you know, they were 2-0 up and they threw it away, and that's dampened the mood. And it has dampened the mood. It wasn't perfect. It was a little bit sedate. But there is sort of context here. After 69 minutes, they're 2-0 up. They're pretty much cruising. They bring Craig Gordon on and give him the big goodbye. He's not going to the tournament. His 75th cap. He goes in goal. Everyone's like, Craig, thank you very much. Within a couple of minutes, it's 2-1. He's conceded a goal. A couple of minutes later, he brings down the striker and gives away a penalty, gets booked, and then concedes the penalty. So the idea of sort of bringing him on for the last 20 minutes probably wasn't a great idea in the end. And that has changed the mood a little bit about how people felt about the warm-up games. Look, they always up themselves against bigger teams, right? Spain. They beat Spain in qualifying. Their qualification performance was absolutely terrific under Steve Clarke. And he's very good at changing the formation and putting the right personnel in place at the right time to attack those moments where they need to get points. I think they'll be better than you think they'll be. They may even get something on the opening night against Germany, and they may cause a surprise against Switzerland. I think they will get at least a point. I think they're going to qualify for the last 16 for the first time in their history. I might be being a little bit over optimistic because I've spent a bit of time studying them, but I do think at the big moments they turn it on. They've had terrible injuries. Right back in particular has been a problem for them.
Yeah. Look, I genuinely hope you're right. And I also do think if you're going to play Germany, being at home, the first game is the time to play them, because we talk about nerves, they will be nervous of that. There's no doubt about it. So hopefully they can nick a point there. I do think Hungary is going to be very difficult to get anything. And Switzerland, it's almost a 50-50, but going into that game, I think Switzerland will still be favourites. Look, I understand where Crook is coming from, I do, but 3rd place is absolutely what they should be aiming for. And you know, you described that really well, what happened in the Finland game. So it's almost like the game finished at 70 minutes, 75 minutes, really, because of what happened since then. He made substitutions, changed the game in the wrong way, but wouldn't have done in a competitive match. The bottom line is I think the injuries have absolutely killed them. Yeah. I really do.
Yeah,
it's
really
Aaron Hickey, I think, is a really, really good player. Nathan Patterson obviously could have filled in for him, not been able to do that. Lewis Ferguson been voted the best midfielder in Serie A. I think midfield, they're pretty strong, I have to say, probably the strongest part. But you're going to win games.
Goals.
You've got to score goals.
Set piece is going to be massive for them.
Absolutely. So I do worry for them in terms of where they're finishing the group.
I think they just got to play the underdog role, which they did against Spain. Spain hated the game in Scotland.
Really? Rodri
complained it sounded awful. Sounded awful after the game. They got battered 2-0. Lyndon Dykes bullied the entire Spanish back four. They were aggressive. It was Spain weren't expecting that. The pitch wasn't great. It was a cloudy, miserable old evening, and they put their foot in. McGinn was aggressive. They were all aggressive. They've got to do something. When you're an underdog like Scotland, you have to do something different. You can't go and play. You mentioned someone earlier, I can't remember who it was, because they're all the same anyway, a Pep Guardiola disciple. They're all going to play that type of football, which we see in the Premier League, which we see is now spreading across international managers. Scotland have got to do something completely different. Be direct, be winning knockdowns, winning second balls, win free kicks, concentrate, really work hard on your attacking set pieces. Don't concede cheap goals. You've got to play the underdog.
You used to room with Steve Clarke.
I know Clarkey, yeah. I mean, he comes across as he's actually really funny, really dry, very cutting as well behind closed doors. There's almost like a barrier up whenever he goes in front of the cameras. But he's a really clever man. He's a really good coach, and he will do what needs to be done for Scotland. Not we want this philosophy. He will do what do we need to do to get. It's almost a bit like Carlo Ancelotti to win this particular game, or to get up these 2, 3,
what
maybe
won't they
4
like?
points.
What do they not want to play against?
And if you have to play ugly, he'll play ugly. The bottom line is we know Scotland are not going to score a lot of goals. So what do you then have to make sure you are? Solid defensively. So if you nick it 1-0 or get 1-1, because very rarely are they going to score 2 in a game.
I think you've got to look at his record at Kilmarnock in particular. West Brom, he did a very good job, by the way. Kilmarnock, he did a really good job. No one expected Kilmarnock to get up into the top 3 and really cause problems at the top end of the table. He did a fantastic job with the underdogs there, and I think that's the sort of spirit he's taken into the Scotland camp as well. They played better football than people give them credit for as well. They did do that over the last year, especially in qualifying. The last 10 months has been difficult, absolutely. But let's just see what happens when the tournament
I hope
starts.
I'm wrong and you're right, by the way, but I just feel like they were in a better position with the injuries in particular going into that last Euros on home soil than they are now.
Well, fingers crossed. Let's round things off by picking some of the ones to watch ahead of the big kickoff on Friday. Don't want to go into too much detail, just quick fire answers, please, because we're running out of time. Player of the tournament from each of you?
Player of the tournament, I went with Florian Wirtz.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, okay. Portugal are going to be fantastic. Yeah, and now he's gone for one of the ones that we've been talking about. But fair enough, go on. Griezmann, yeah, he was on my list.
I've gone trying to be patriotic, so if England are going to win, I'm going to Declan Rice.
Okay, I'm going Ilkay Gundogan at Germany. Let's go for one to watch from each. You can go first so he doesn't nick it this time.
Well, that was my guy.
Yeah.
Apparently there's a guy called Tony Kroos who's, you probably never heard of. He's going to be...
one to watch. Yeah. So younger, more emerging talents.
I'm going Florian Wirtz. I think he's had a wonderful season, and I think him on one side, Musiala on the other. I was difficult to pick between those two, but I've gone for Wirtz.
Okay, Anthony Gordon I thought about as one to watch because I think he's going to make an impact off the bench for England, if not start. But Benjamin Šeško is going to be the first ever Slovenian superstar. He's going to get a big move, probably to Arsenal in the summer, and they absolutely love him. He can do everything. He's got pace, he's got height, he can finish, he can create. He is going to be special. He might not be the best player at this tournament, but I think he will end up being a star in the future, so keep your eye on him. One to watch for you?
Nico Williams. Hardly a surprise. I've gone for a Spaniard.
One of the many Basque players in the Spanish squad.
Yep, and he's because he plays for Athletic Club, people around in the UK probably haven't seen him an awful lot. He is brilliant. Loves the dribble. Bit rare nowadays. He's not a fan of the two-touch, control, pass, move it, but he just gets it and direct and skillful. A fantastic winger. 21-year-old.
Well, I'm looking at that Hungary team. I guess I can't put up Dominik Szoboszlai as one to watch because we know all about him. So I'm going to go for Salai instead, the forward who scored a lot of goals this season. I think could have a really good tournament. Could even be a dark horse for Golden Boot.
Okay, letdown of the tournament.
I've gone for Spain, and Terry's made the case why they could go deep into the draw, but he's also made the case into why it might be a difficult tournament. I just don't see where the goals are coming from for them. I don't think Morata is at the right level in a major tournament, and I think they picked Jose Perez at the age of 30 for the first time.
Yeah, he's been good this year. Hostler is another one that could score goals.
Again, he's in the twilight of his career now, isn't he? He's in the twilight of his career.
We love
it is a point, though.
Yeah.
It's a fair point.
What, letdown?
Germany.
Oof. Okay, I'm going to go for Switzerland, Denmark. I couldn't work out which one I wanted to go for. Serbia. I think I'll probably go Switzerland.
I'm going for Italy. A bit like Spain, it's a tough group with Croatia. I think Croatia are savvy enough to get through. I do think Spain will win the group. Croatia second, Italy third. I hope for their sake that's enough for them to qualify, but may even get knocked out furthest. They'll get his quarterfinals.
Top scorer from each?
Harry Kane.
Thought about Gonzalo Ramos off the bench. Portugal will spread the goals around though. I'm going Lukaku, 14 in qualifying.
Easy group as well.
Exactly. They've got Ukraine, Romania and Slovakia. So I'm going Lukaku. What about you? Mbappe?
I'll put up 2. Kai Havertz, because he's going to play the false number 9. I think he was on Scott's list as well. But actually, my big outsider, and this will get laughed out of town, not least by producer Jeremy, Bruno Fernandes. He's scored bags of goals in qualifying. I think he ended the season with Manchester United in great form. And I think Portugal will win it.
I was waiting for him to mention Manchester United.
I was waiting for the laugh from Jeremy.
And lastly, the winners. Just one word from all of you. Go.
Portugal.
France.
Germany.
France.
No one said England. But we really want England to win. And to tell you what, I would love to be completely wrong.
Me too.
Listen, have a great tournament. Enjoy it. Remember, Euros All Access is with you every single day from Friday, from the start of the tournament, take you through the tournament and guide you through it with all the background gossip. He's hobnobbing every single day, talking to the big wigs. I'll be at all the games. Terry will be doing some games for talkSPORT as well. Scott's doing games for talkSPORT too. So we're all in the thick of the action. We're really looking forward to it. Piercy's going to join us as well. Graham Souness is going to join us on the podcast over the course of the next few weeks. So make sure you're a part of it as well. Thanks for watching. Remember to leave us a couple of comments and make sure you subscribe and like and let everybody know about Euros All Access from talkSPORT.